Name a shittier sequel than New Mexico. And don't you dare say Disney Wars, that's cheating. Who in high holy hell was sitting around at a Tijuana tanning bench, busily dodging Guadalajara organ thieves and cartel cannon fire, and actually said aloud to themselves, now where can I find more of this shit? Hey, here's an idea. An entire state dedicated to the principle of being a Kroger brand Arizona, suffused with cartel corruption, all enthralled to a clipped-haired cranky cuntosaurus who wants to talk to the entire country's fucking manager. Throw in politics bluer than my tongue after 15 otter pops, and an economy softer than Clay Aiken in a titty bar, and welcome to New Mexico. Same as the old Mexico, but with shittier food. And now, of course, you can throw in the gun policies of post-war Berlin, as Governor Tin Pot and honorary bailiff of the Lollipop Guild, Michelle Grisham, and her pissed PTA mom hairdo, unilaterally and oh so illegally declared a moratorium on gun carry inside city limits in response to an outbreak of bullet wounds.
You took an oath to the Constitution. Isn't it unconstitutional to say you cannot exercise your carry license?
With one exception, and that is if there's an emergency, and I've declared an emergency for a temporary amount of time, I can invoke additional powers. No constitutional right, in my view, including my oath, is intended to be absolute. There are restrictions on free speech. There are restrictions on my freedoms. In this emergency, this 11-year-old and all these parents who have lost all these children, they deserve my attention.
Do you really think that criminals are going to hear this message and not carry a gun in Albuquerque on the streets for 30 days?
No.
Isn't technology a wonder? In 2023, even our tyrants are smaller and more efficient. I'd call it a Napoleon complex, but frankly, Napoleon could dribble with this bitch. And judging by that double chin, it's more of a Neapolitan complex. But if all I was gonna do is tell short jokes and drop a deuce on this socialist smurf, okay, I probably would still make the video, but believe it or not, that's not my primary purpose for recording it. This isn't a warning to New Mexico or their Bolshevik bridge troll of a governor. The voting public of Albuquerque have ignored more warning signs than Metallica's tour bus driver. This is a warning to those of us who, like the founders of this fucking country, actually acknowledge firearm ownership rights as utterly immutable. See, in the wake of this Wendigo's dictum, I noticed a fuck of a lot of folks I otherwise respect immensely falling for one of the oldest tricks in the book. A defense of firearm rights solely on a Second Amendment basis. Don't get me wrong, shall not be infringed is about as subtle as a snow shovel to the face, and clinging limp-dickedly to the only the militia reframe only makes it infinitely worse for the left. As founding father George Mason was once quoted, who is the militia, you ask? Why, the whole of the people, except for a few government officials. And all that's well and good, except that the Second Amendment isn't where most of your gun rights really come from. And the first clue that they don't should have dawned on all of you when avowed authoritarian gun grabbers Ted Lieu and David fucking Hogg began to browbeat this Leninist lawn gnome on the basis that she'd violated not state law, but the federal Second Amendment. You're being set up harder than an ugly best friend on a double date, people. Specifically, you're being set up to accept something far more nefarious than mere disarmament, but a wedge in the doorframe of the remaining frayed fucking rivulets of your personal liberty. A philosophy called incorporation. You love the Second Amendment. I love the Second Amendment. Fuck, I want to wear a purity ring and go steady with the Second Amendment. But the preamble to the Bill of Rights makes clear as polished crystal that it applies exclusively to the federal government. If Pelosi or Palooka Joe sent this Soviet stupidity up the flagpole, the Second Amendment would smack their asses down like Jake Paul fighting someone his own age. But New Mexico already has its own Bill of Rights, and if you don't want it to be superseded by the Supreme Court's profoundly fucking false interpretation of the 14th Amendment, I urge you to actually read it. What chapter and verse, you inquire? Article 2, Section 6 of the New Mexico Constitution states, and I quote, No law shall abridge the right of the citizen to keep and bear arms for security and defense, unquote. Fuck's sake, the Second Amendment is 60 times more vague than that. It not only says, bitch, don't ban guns, it explicitly enshrines the right to use them in defense of your life, liberty, property, or puppies. Why the world-rending fuck would you exchange that exceptionally written section of the New Mexico Bill of Rights for a fucked up federal incarnation of the self-same law that can be easily and abruptly reverse engineered to assail your fucking firearms rights the moment a Marxist or two slithers their ass onto the Supreme Court? Yet the first chance our imbecilic gun rights organizations got, they filed an injunction against the governor in fucking federal court? How are you halfwits still falling for this shit? The entire reason David Hogg is attacking this action is because allowing firearm rights to rest in the arms of the fucking feds will ultimately make it easier for him to assail your gun rights once the Supreme Court is recaptured by the Comintern, which one day it absolutely will be. Can you miss the point any harder than entrusting the federal government and an unelected judiciary to permanently safeguard gun rights in the same week we mark the anniversary of the national tragedy that gave us the goddamn Patriot Act? You people piss and whine about Kevin McCarthy's hapless do-nothing impeachment inquiry, and all the while you're falling for a trap so obvious you can spot its moose knuckle from space? If you'd instead sent this case to the New Mexico Supreme Court, they would have backhanded this bullshit at ludicrous speed so Spinsterella could go back to hang gliding on a Dorito in Honey, I Shrunk the Governor. I'm Razor Fist. God fucking speed.
I've said to every other New Mexican, your rights are subrogated to theirs.
Huh?